Hi, everyone. I have a special guest here today. Her name is Callie Thomas. She is also a Kindle Vella author, and I've had some requests for interviews with other Vella authors to kind of share their experiences and what they're writing on Vella, what's working for them, their thoughts on the platform, and some tips for any other Vella authors. So that's why we're here today. And we're going to talk about her story, which is called A Forest of Stolen Memories. So tell me a little bit about your Kindle Vella story, what it's about, and what gave you the idea, how it got started.
It's that elevator pitch that's so hard to do.
Elevator pitches are the worst. They're so hard.
I think I just posted a meme about that on my Instagram. So my story is about a girl who is cursed, like immediately, like from the get-go, where she loses all of her memories, and she just kind of comes to, and she's marrying, or being forced to marry, she doesn't quite know, a prince. So she kind of panics, she flees, and it's mostly a story of her trying to get her memories back. And she goes and runs off into this magical forest and meets this man, I guess. And so that's pretty much the story right now. And lots of wood action. So
how many episodes are you in for what you've got posted so far on the story?
I think I'm on 15. 2 of them are bonus episodes that I've done through incentive goals. So I hadn't actually planned on writing them, but they're from the perspective of the 2 male leads from the story. And so but they actually turned really great. I'm so happy that you guys like we were able to unlock it, because it really added a lot to the story.
Yeah, so that's I know we were planning to talk a little bit about like marketing tips, because you've had more success than I have with marketing your story. But so I just kind of want to expand on that for a minute, because I think the incentive goals for unlocking bonus episodes is such a simple idea, but one that I hadn't thought of. So if you maybe just want to take a second to kind of explain for any other Vella authors who are watching, like what you mean by the bonus episodes and how you kind of set that up.
Okay, so when I first started, I wanted to do something to kind of encourage readers to like, without necessarily like begging them to like, because I feel like a lot of times, especially in our author notes, we can be like, please, 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 please hit the like, follow,
please,
how it is.
Please, yeah.
And so instead, I wanted to make it more of like a goal, something we can achieve together. And I posted where you can unlock like special perspective episodes. So the first one I did was Cedric. And if we got to, and I did like a very low goal, because like I said, I'm a new author and I was not expecting to be like 500 from the get-go. I was giving myself a very low bar. And so I always said 100 likes, and I'll do a double episode drop, because I'm releasing about every other week now. And I was like, well, if I do that, then it'll be a special episode, everybody will be happy. And then once that one happened, then I did another one, and I did Prince Alexander's perspective. And then from that point, I didn't know what to do. So I did a vote, and that's what just happened. Now for 500 likes, I did, moving to weekly. So I had 4 options, and I had everybody vote. And it actually was a pretty good turnout this time with how many people had said what they wanted to do. And so now if I get to 500 likes, I think I'm at 465 right now.
I know you're close. You're really close.
I'm close, but at the same time, as I'm watching it move forward, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta move to weekly when I get here. What was I thinking? So that's pretty much it. It's just working together with the reader to both achieve the same goal.
So tell me a little bit about the idea for your story, because you kind of gave an explanation, and I know I've heard the idea because it's in one of your author notes, but I think it's interesting. So I just wanted to kind of have you share a little bit about how you got this idea for it, because your story literally begins with her kind of waking up, not from sleep, but just suddenly like, where am I? Who am I? Who is this man trying to kiss me? So you're very much just shoved into the story. And that's a really intriguing, yes. And that's a really intriguing way to open a story. So tell us a little bit about how you got the idea and where this concept for the story came from.
So my idea behind it was a backward fairy tale. So I was thinking that you started at the end of the story, or what you think is the end of the story, and then you work backwards. So I was trying to see if by going this route, would the princess, would she make the same choices, you know, in reverse, not knowing what she already knew? Would the story be different? Would it end differently? And so a lot of times when people are asking me questions about my story, I'm like, think of a fairy tale in reverse. So that's pretty much what we're doing. We're going backwards, but then we'll go forward again. So, but it was just this crazy idea that I had, where thinking that you were going to be marrying Prince Charming, this guy who's amazing and gorgeous, and being like, nah, I don't think I want that. Which I got a lot of feedback, being like, I'd not be running from no prince. I want to, you know, like, it was really hard to convince them because I'm surprised at most of you that you would just let some stranger kiss you. But yeah, so that was my whole idea, was that it was working in reverse. And I don't normally write like fantasy. I'm normally a contemporary. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to come out the gate with a fairy tale, because this is a great idea. So hopefully, if you've read it a little bit, it's very fast, like, especially at the beginning. I didn't want to dwell too much. And the good news is, when you don't have a memory, you don't need to worry about backstory. You just kind of power through.
I find the concept of kind of a fairy tale in reverse really interesting. I guess my favorite part of your concept is that question, like, if you had to do it again, would you even choose the same thing? Because that's such an interesting way of looking at, you know, the typical stories that we just assume, like, okay, happy ever after, and, you know, she married the prince. But
the best, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. But maybe he's not. Maybe they live a life of regret that we just never see.
Things got so sad, so fast. No,
no, I think it's a really interesting concept. And I am, you know, I haven't read all the episodes you've posted so far, but I am enjoying the ones I've read. It is very fast paced. There is something kind of cool about not being burdened by that backstory, because you're exploring the world with her. So there's not, it makes it feel very immediate, because like, she's as confused as you are.
Yeah. So. It's a very fine line to walk, because I don't want the reader to be too confused that they're like, I'm not interested anymore. But still being like, they want to know more. So I've been trying to drop, at least, you know, every episode, like little breadcrumbs. Is that like hands on bread? I keep referring to it. So dropping little breadcrumbs as you go, that you can find, sometimes, you know, can find nuggets of information. And I just had a review come out that she was like, it has a lot of readability, because, you know, you can go back and you can reread it again and be like, I didn't catch that when I read that the first time, that's what this meant, you know. And so I'm trying, without being too obvious. That's the hard part. Like, I want to lead you, but I don't want to like shove you. So
I think you've done a really good job of making it feel like, writing that balance and making it feel not confusing, but like intriguing. There's a fine line between curiosity and confusion, right?
And it's also like, what can she remember? So it's like, when you're doing like writing and you're like, oh, this reminds me of X, and I'm like, would she have remembered X? I'm like, okay, delete. Or just even like backs, like not even back, but like flashbacks, like trying to like put those in, like, so that they don't feel like just thrown in your face. It's all like it.
Yeah.
And I've been told that people that you shouldn't start stories with dreams or people that lose their memory. I did not get this memo until after
Well,
I had started.
so this is my view on that, because like I said, I have a story, I have a book that starts that way too. I think that we get that advice because it's, you know, it can be cliche and it can be done poorly. But I think if you can do it well, you can break any rule. That's what I think.
Break the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you can, I forget who said it, but there's somebody one author, like a famous author, who said the only rule in writing is don't be boring. So if you're keeping the readers entertained, then I don't think, you can throw everything else out. If they're enjoying your story and they're there and they're reading and they're engaged, then you're doing something right, clearly. So
there's still a few sticking around, so I appreciate that. Thank you for reading.
You clearly have readers who are reading through your episodes. They're not jumping ship after the first couple. They're liking them, they're clicking the thumbs up, which those are all hurdles. If you're a Vella author, those are all hurdles that you have to kind of push the reader over. They don't naturally click the thumbs up on every episode.
They do. That's how I usually can tell if it's a real reader. that's how I'm like, oh, they've read like 6 episodes, but they didn't like it. I was like, oh, it's a real one. It got me a real one.
You're like, but did they not like it, or did they just not click the, it's like a little bit of.
They kept going. Like, if you didn't like it, you'd be like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So
that's me assuming.
I mean, I think that's a valid assumption, because if a reader gets bored, especially if they're having to pay to unlock episodes, like they've made it past the 3 free ones, if they're bored, they're just not going to keep going. That's the beauty of Vella, is like they can quit at any time, if it's really just not for them. So I think you're right that if you're getting read through, then you're clearly keeping attention. You're doing something right, clearly. So I think
I feel like it's hard for me to pinpoint it. Everybody keeps asking, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know.
Well, one thing that we discussed, and I was planning to ask this anyway, just kind of like in terms of your approach to writing, and you've touched on it, but I know we had a conversation before about pacing for Vella, because that is one thing that I think you're doing for this platform in particular. There's an expectation for pacing to stay, like you can't really lag and lose interest because you lose the reader, right? So tell me a little bit about like your approach to writing and how you're pacing your episodes, and how that would be different maybe for if you were writing a book.
Well, I find that with Vella versus like a regular traditional books tend to want to dive into a story and really like show the detail and like a magic of a scene, or like, oh, there's this really beautiful description paragraph about this. We don't have time for that in Vella. We got to press on. It's a very quick pace. You have to grab a reader. You only have a very small, well, it should be small number of words that you're giving out for each episode. So it needs to be like impactful, that it needs to draw them in immediately and not just kind of flounder in place. You need to keep moving consistently through the episode so that you hold the reader's attention, and then end with a hook at the end to make them keep going. So that's the hardest part, I feel like, for me, versus the pacing, is the hook. Because I mean, I feel like especially there's a lot of like, whoa, she's in danger at like the end of some of my episodes, and I'm like, man, this girl, she's killing me.
But that is so important. Like for me, for Vella, my episode length has varied because I will sometimes let the episode be longer if I need to end on a hook. So it's like, that's a hard balance to find, because you don't want this like super long episode that's going to lose readers, but also you can't end where it feels resolved, because then you've lost the push for them to keep going. So it's an interesting balance.
I read somewhere that an episode length should be between like 1,500 to about 2,000 words. And that was my goal. Don't look at my numbers, but that was my goal at the beginning. I was like,
that was my goal too, but some of mine are more like 3,000.
Yes. And so then I got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm at like 29. I'm like, I'm never going to go over 3,000. That's my new goal. I'm not going to break it. I'm like, 2,900, 29, like right on the edge. And then last week, I think it was, I was like 32 something. And I was like, all right, I tried, guys. And most of the time, I feel like, especially at the beginning, when it feels like you're trying to like get to know the character and the story, you don't want it to slog and be long. You want it to be shorter. But then once they are actually into the story and they're like hungry for it, then maybe you could have longer episodes that it wouldn't feel like, it was a bunch of like you learning the character, or, you're more into the story is happening and you want to know. It's like, knowing your favorite TV show and, you're into the thick of it. You're like in the middle part and you're like, no, I want more. I want to keep going. So
yeah, that makes sense. And I'm sort of where you are, where my goal was like 1,500. For anyone who doesn't know, the actual range for a Kindle Vella goes all the way up to 5,000, right? You could have an episode that's 600 to 5,000 is the range. I feel like 600. Well, for me personally, 600 is like nearly impossible. I can't write that short.
Like a couple paragraphs. I can't. I do.
Yeah, I can't do an episode in 600 words. But my goal was like 1,500, and most of my episodes, some of mine are 1,000 to 1,500, but most of them are more in the 2,000 to 3,000 range. And I think I have one or two that just barely went over 3,000. The cool thing about Kindle Vella is readers only have to pay for however many words you give them. So it's okay if you have a shorter episode because it actually costs them less. But you also, pacing wise, you have to kind of balance like ending with a hook, like you said, and then making sure the episode doesn't get so long that they lose interest partway through it, but not so short that they lose interest because it didn't hook them enough. Like you have to ride that balance of keeping the pacing and the hooks and everything.
And I feel like it's hard to give advice on that because it varies per story. So like depending on like what genre you're writing or like your writing style, and people always message me and they're like, why are you so stressed out about word count? I'm like, because it's supposed to be between 1,500 to 2,000. And I am like at 3,600 or whatever over here. I've gone way over. And so I keep trying to wheel myself back in because I also don't want them to be like, this is like the never ending episode. What is going on? Hopefully you don't feel that way when you're reading mine. Like you're not.
No, I mean, I feel like if enough is happening, like 3,000 words can fly by and it doesn't even feel like anything. So, but
hope you read 14. Let me know. Let me know if it feels like it's the never ending episode, because people were like, we'll spend however many tokens it costs to do this. Because I actually look like when I'm about to unlock an episode and I'm like, 44 tokens. That's a lot of tokens, because like the 199 package is 200 tokens. That's a good chunk of your tokens right there just on one episode. This better be the best episode of my life.
Which is why, this is why I wish they had comments on episodes, because if readers could see comments and like
it was good
and everybody is like raving about this episode, then they're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to pay these 44 tokens, right? Like,
yeah, because I want to say even who was it, Chrissy, she had some episodes that were like 5,000 words, and I was like 50, it was like 55 tokens for one, and I was like, that's a lot of tokens. That's a lot of tokens. That's more than that's like you just went through a quarter, of your $1.99.
Which is interesting because like it feels like more like if you were to, the story is going to be what the story is going to be. If you were to break that 5,000 into 1,000 word episodes, they would still be paying the same amount of tokens for it, but it's going to feel like more whenever they're like 55 in one drop,
Sometimes actually it sounds weird, but if I'm looking at an episode and I'm like, I think it was yours, and I was like 10 tokens. Yeah, because I was like, sometimes I was like, okay, maybe I should stop here and because you can use, and I was like 10 tokens. Oh, I keep going. So because it doesn't feel like it's like when you're at the checkout, you know, at the grocery store, and you're like, that's like nothing, like a pack of M&Ms. I'll take it. 50 cents,
Yeah.
you know? And so, but yeah, then when you're like, oh, this pack of M&Ms is now $5. So it's all these things to consider. It's literally like your little board behind you that we need to like, so the circles, interlocking the circles with the string and being like, this is the way to write the perfect Vella. And really, to even factor in on top of that, genres matter. So it's like, maybe
because some genres naturally, like the readers are expecting short episodes, and other genres they're expecting to like be pulled in for a longer, like, genre matters. Genre matters, and probably also like your target readership age matters. And
I did not have that beforehand. That was my bad. Stephanie was like, you need to know your target audience. And I'm like, people, anybody will read my book. That's my audience, anybody. That knowing like who you're, it's the same thing with like the hashtags, knowing who you want to read. You need to be able to pinpoint who they are so that you can focus just on them. Like being the jack of all trades, you know, you want to be able to focus on just the one thing. And I've seen like, that's one of the cool things about Vella is the variety of like writing styles that I've seen, just, you know, going around and supporting other authors and looking at them. And I'm just like Chrissy Dallas just did a new Vella that just came out. I think it's called A Wishing on a Streaming Star. I don't know if you've looked at that one yet, but she has like, she has regular writing and then it flips to script writing like mid episode, that I was like, this is genius. And so, I mean, it's just like learning all this new, and I think hers is also, she has voting as well. I've seen a couple of authors do that where they're not just like me with incentive goals of like, hey, if we get to this many likes, we will do X. They are like, you are in charge of my story. I think Nellie is another one that does that, where it's like, what does my character do this on the next episode? Does she do X or does she do Y? And with the votes, then she writes that. I think that's more scary than like me writing, like I know you said you were a planner, you know, that's got to be like, okay,
well,
so
I've
really
so I've actually done something like that before, and it was definitely a challenge. And the only thing that made it easier is that I didn't have very many readers. I had like a small handful of them. So it was like, if this is ridiculous, at least only like a few people are even following this, because I was posting them on my blog.
And now you have to repeat Vella. So
yeah, if I had enough readers on Vella, I might consider doing that, but at like certain key points, because the story I'm writing right now would be really hard. By the way. What?
I said, which is great, by the way. I like.
Oh, thank you. I feel like it would be really, really hard to completely like not know where I was going with it, because there's a lot of, like you were saying about having to drop in the breadcrumbs for your story. There's a lot of that I'm having to do. So if I like didn't know at all where I was going because I was waiting for reader feedback, it would be really difficult.
That's kind of what's hard about writing Vella like live, but because I'm doing mine like every week. There's no cushion. There's no like if I write something and I'm like, oh, you know what, I should have put something back in episode 4 about this, so it would tie it all in, but it's too late. Episode 4 has been out since like launch. You know what I mean? Like there's no backwards. So I'm guessing it would be similar to that.
Yeah, it's like improv in a way. Like I don't know if you've ever done any acting, but it's like you just have to. You can't like go undo. You just have to go and keep moving forward with it and make it work.
Look busy.
Yeah. Which I mean, I think it's an interesting challenge as an author. And I think there are some authors who just wouldn't be attracted to writing serially because that's not what they want. So I think Vella kind of, at least authors who are coming into Vella understanding that it's different than writing a traditional book. Those who come in understand
a book and cutting it up like at the end of the chapter in an episode.
Yeah, so I guess as one takeaway, if you're a person considering Vella or a new Vella author, would be that it really is, it needs to be something written for the Vella format. Like, yeah, it's not going to work as well to just divide a book up. Like the story I'm writing for Vella is part of a larger story world, but I actually set aside the book I was writing in that world to write something for Vella because I knew it was going to have hooky ends to every episode. It was going to have to be built a certain way. So that's something to consider for sure.
That hook at the end of the Vella episodes is harder than I think a real book, because like, especially if you have it on, ebook or real book, and you have it in your hand and you're like, you're going to keep going because it's already there. You got the whole thing. But then when you have Vella episodes, you have the option to stop at any time.
Yeah. It's literally a decision every episode to either purchase or not.
Yes. I mean, you get the first 3 free. So,
right.
I mean, those are like your shooting star, like your superstar episodes that need to come out and wow everybody. And so does 4. A lot of people, I think, forget 4, like, because they're like, but that's their first one that they're going to, unless they're new, because I know new readers get the 200 free tokens, but like that they're going to be like, okay, was this worth, is this worth the journey? Because there's some people have like 50 something, 60 something episodes. They're either, I feel like there's 2 groups. There's the people that drop everything, and then there's the weekly people, my camp, I say I'm still doing like every other week.
But no, that's a really good point, because that is episode 4 is going to be the deciding factor for whether they feel like it's worth their tokens to keep going.
Yes. So, because they have it, and so sometimes I think people are like, they decide, was this worth? I know it sounds silly, but I made sure that my title for 4 was catchy as well, because they might be on the fence about hitting, like, should I get this episode? They can also, when they open up the preview for the next episode, like any episode, they get a little bit.
Yeah, it's like the first few lines they can see. Yeah.
You want that to be good as well. Like, you want that to be like, to draw you, and you're like, all right,
I'll say, as a reader, that's convinced me to unlock episodes before, where I was like, not sure if I wanted to keep going, and then I just kind of skimmed the first couple lines, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna read this.
That's good. It's worth the purchase. And it's not like it's that much. It's not like it's like pennies or whatever for an episode. But some people, it's still, they want to make sure they're spending it on a book that they know they're going to enjoy. And I feel that the other episode you probably want to, not say worry about, but look into, is the one where they actually have to buy tokens. I know some people don't, like, now it's not as common, because at the beginning of Vella, everybody had free tokens. So it was like, wow, I have all these reads, but I'm not making any royalties or anything because everybody's using free stuff. But you want to check in your story where the 200 mark is up, like, ends, and make sure that's also another superstar episode. Like, you want to make sure that episode keeps their interest, has a good hook, so that they want to keep going, to possibly even purchase tokens afterwards.
That's a really good tip, because there are still, especially as Amazon is promoting it, they're still doing the free 200 tokens. So as new readers are coming in, that's going to continue to be a factor. And if you're a Vella author, if you go into your dashboard, it actually shows you how many tokens each of your episodes costs, or you can calculate based on your word count. And so add that up, and when you hit the 200 mark, that next episode is going to be the one that they're going to need to actually buy a package of tokens to unlock it. So that's good advice. Take a look at that, whatever number episode that is. Take a look at that one and make sure that the first few lines are really hooky, the title is hooky, because that is going to be part of the factor for deciding whether they're actually going to keep going with your story once those free tokens run.
I feel like if you can get past that hurdle, like that one, that's like I don't want to say the last one, but like, all right, I purchased tokens. I'm in it to win it now for this story. That's usually you've got them at that. That sounds bad, but you have a reader at that point. So
yeah, how do you say that nicely? You have entertained them well enough that they want to keep going, right?
yes,
You're doing your job well. There you go. Because our job, yeah, I mean, it sounds like very salesy, but that really is your job as an author, is to compel them to keep going. Like, you want your story to be that enjoyable, that engaging, right? So if you're doing your job well, that's, we can say it that way. You're doing your job well if they will continue past
that. Sounds way better than what I
and it's interesting that you put thought into the title, because that's I have a writing mentor who always says your title is your first hook. So, and that's true for the title of your book, but in Vella, because you can have a title for every episode, that's a missed opportunity if you're not making those interesting.
Yes.
And you don't have to use them, they're optional, but again, it's a missed opportunity if you're not using them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like, so the title and your cover, because sometimes I've noticed a lot of people who are bringing books to Vella and they won't clean up their, not clean, but they have a lot of text on their image. And so it makes it hard to see, because sometimes it's just a quick glance where they're scrolling through stories and they can't tell what it's about, because that's usually out. You look at the picture and you're like, that looks intriguing. What's the title? Okay, then you click on it, then you'll go and you'll check the blurb. It's kind of like a step-by-step process. And so if your cover, your picture is full with text, you're blocking a lot of I feel like that's the beauty. And it doesn't even need to be anything crazy, which is great about Vella. Like with a cover, like a real book, you have to go get a designer and it needs to be super fancy. And with Vella, it just needs to, I would say, like be bright, poppy, something like that would catch like the reader's attention as they're scrolling by, because there's getting to be a bunch of stories now. It's starting to really multiply lately. And when you're checking stock photos, just do a quick look around and make sure that nobody else, because I've seen a couple now where they've had like the same girl,
the same photo, yeah.
And I'm like, hey, I noticed that you had the same cover as XYZ, you don't want to be confused for someone else's story either. I made my own cover, so it's not anything fancy, but I just wanted it to be just for that scenario, that it wouldn't be mixed up with somebody else.
Yeah, nothing you have to worry about being used in anyone else's story. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my cover is an original one too, but yeah, it's not necessary to like make it, but
yeah,
it's good. It's good advice to at least make sure that your cover isn't super similar to someone else's.
Because you want to stand out. I want to say, what was the other thing that I noticed? Your blurb. Make sure. I
have the hardest time with blurbs.
I just saw somebody post. It's one of those things that, like, if you don't have an editor, just have like a couple people read your blurb, which is a whole nother side story I would love to go into about why you should always have an editor. If you, I've seen some people that are like, nah, it's just Vella. No, you need an editor. Unless you're really good at that, I'm not. So I personally need somebody.
I think it's just generally good advice. I don't have an official editor like you do, but I have an alpha team and a proofreader. So they function together as my editor.
Yeah. You need somebody else's eyes on it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm like, because I feel bad when I like look at another story and I'm like, ooh, like people are reading this, the blurb needs to also be like amazing. Like and I feel like my blurb I probably still need to rewrite it, but because that's one of the things they're going to look at and draw you into the story. Like I said, it's like that step-by-step, like stepping stone, where it's just like, it's the cover, it's the title, it's the blurb, and then then they're looking at your Superstar 3 episodes. Is it worth moving to episode 4? And then from there, is it worth paying for tokens for this? And so, but that blurb, like I saw somebody who used some of their, it was a book. They had taken a book and they had like copied and pasted their blurb from their book, but Vella has a very limited amount of characters for a blurb. It's like 250. Yeah. And I feel like it's unnecessarily small for a wordy person. And it's a challenge, another challenge. And so you want to make sure that your blurb isn't a book blurb, but like a Vella blurb. Yeah. And it's another hook.
I've changed mine at least 3 times so far, because I keep like, I'm looking at what other stories are doing and then kind of comparing what seems to be working and then tweaking mine, and then I'll go back and read it and I'm still not happy with it. And so I've changed mine at least 3 times.
I keep wanting to, because I think mine's in third person and my story's in first. And so I've heard people go, if your story's in first, you should have your blurb in first. And I was like, the part of me is always like, but a blurb should be in third. It's like that, but it's Vella, so I need to keep reminding myself the book rules, some of them are out the window with Vella. So you just need to roll with the punches. So I need to go back.
Also because Vella only gives you that 250 words. Some authors also use that to put their posting schedule. Like it is different rules for Vella than what you would do for like an Amazon book description.
How do they do that? How do they have extra words to be able to put that stuff in? I need some lessons.
Mine has my posting schedule in it, but it's I just say like new episodes every Friday is all it says. But that's words that I couldn't then have in describing my story. So yeah, I keep changing mine. I'm still not happy with it, but it's
I feel like this is something you don't want to ask me for advice for. I feel like this is not that in quotes. Those are like my 2 low things. I'm always like asking people, I'm like, do you like my story? Can you please send me a quote? Because I don't know. I swear I wrote it. I don't know.
Yeah, I have the same problem. I think like that and the log line or elevator pitch is always really hard for me. Like I just freeze up. I'm like, what's your story about?
I don't edit mine, so I don't look that bad.
That's why once you nail your Vella description, it's so short that then you sort of have your log line, right? You're just like, oh, here's what it's about, right? Yeah. If we can nail that.
Yeah, I haven't got that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important, like if you're new to Vella, to realize that Vella kind of has its own, like you really should take some time and actually experience it as a reader and see how it functions, see how you feel about different things that authors do or don't do, see what works for you as a reader in terms of author notes and blurbs and covers and all of that, because that's all very helpful. And there's not a lot, because Vella is so new, there's not a lot of like if you Google what's the best type of blurb for Vella, like you're not gonna get much.
Oh yeah,
the best way you can do, go see the successful stories and what they're doing, and in your genre, because of course it's gonna vary.
I feel like if you also go and when you're reading and you're like, wow, I really like this. I feel like if you wrote that stuff down, like you as a reader, like not taking it from an author's perspective, but in the reader's shoes. And I do a lot of times when I read my books is I'm like, oh, I really like the way that like they had this cliffhanger here or whatever, how I felt like, at this, it felt like I need to keep reading. Or, this blurb was really intriguing. Why was it intriguing? Like I pick things apart like that. So trying to find what works. So if especially you would go into your genre. Also tags are very important. I did not realize that. I know we could probably do this all day, couldn't we?
Well, and tags are another thing that like I've tweaked several times. Like I've changed mine because again, I'm looking at what's working and trying to figure out the best fit for my particular story. And there's so many options. You can literally put anything as a tag.
Yes. But at the same time, you want to, because I had amnesia as one of mine, and it was like just me and myself. And so,
yes.
So you kind of almost want to jump on board with the popular tags because that's what's showing up in that banner on the homepage are, what's popular. So I'm in one that's is it paranormal? No, not paranormal. What is fantasy romance? I'm in fantasy romance, but it's not popular enough to show up on the main thing, on the main bar. So it goes by popularity. How many people are using this tag themselves to see if it makes it into the popularity list? Now, at the same time, when you click on like show me all the tags, it shows a bigger bunch, like a bigger group of tags. And even still, like my fairy tale one still isn't popular enough to be in the second list of, I don't know how many, it's like 4 or 5 pages of tags.
Yeah.
Because I kind of wish we'd all would have got together like in an author meeting and been like, hey guys, I feel we have like a lot of duplicate tags
Right.
here. And if we could have went together, because then, that the more people that get in a tag, the more popular it is, and then it shows up. So
yeah.
Nobody.
The flip side of that is if you go into like a super popular tag that's not an exact fit for your story, you might get buried in that tag category, and then like it's not really helping you. So, and you only get 7. So it has to be like a careful decision of what you're in.
That was me at the very beginning, was changing my story and being like, not that tag. Like, especially over like the romance tag is very populated. It's like the queen bee of Vella is
right.
And so like when I went in there, it was like being a stone dropped into a well, and I'm like, I hope you find me, like all the way down here at the bottom. So but now I don't know, I wish I could say what Amazon is using to order them, because I mean, I'm on the first page of all my tags. I have no idea why. I mean, some days I have like my reads are, I mean, I'm not like a crazy high read numbers, but most of the time my reads are like five readers. Sometimes like amazing days are like 15. Today I only have 2, but I don't know why I would be on the main page versus, I don't know if it's the faves, if it's the likes, or the combination of all of it.
I'm guessing it's probably a combination, but I don't think any of us know the exact algorithms that they're using for anything right now. But it could also just be that their other authors are actually getting even less reads than you. So I don't know. Vella still is very new, so the readership is kind of spotty, I think.
Yes. It comes and goes. And I feel like I've noticed so many people say, like, if you can get into the top 5, which that's unrealistic for me, but if you can get into the top 5, that's like, they get like 300 reads a day or something crazy.
Yes, because they get like that
Prime
visibility. It's like right there. Yeah.
And I even mentioned it. There's the KDP community page. Like there was a Kindle Vella group section, and I mentioned that I was like, hey, I feel like the top 5 get a lot of like mentions like on the homepage, because I mean their stories are obviously good. I'm not saying they're not, but like it's hard when you're like a new author and you don't have a fan base, like trying to get your story from like the bottom of the well, like I was saying, up so anybody could just see it, just one person to look at it. And so right now, if you don't have people reading it, or you're brand new, your best luck is hope you get featured. I mean, they did just add, I mean, I guess it's not new now, but the new stories, they added that. So when you add a new story, you can be there for a little bit. But I mean, what about people that were there at the get-go? You don't have that option. You can only hope for the feature, which we have no idea the rhyme or reason behind who gets featured.
Yeah, we don't even know like how often they change, like it just randomly updates. So
it kept freezing there for a bit too, but that's what I'm hoping for. I'm like, yeah, the people that are like number 1 through 5, I feel like they don't need more advertisement, and they're huge. It's like huge blocks of their pictures. I'm like, I feel like, and I'm not saying me, I'm saying like there's so many stories. Like if you go back, I mean, I'm lucky to be on the first page of a lot of my tags, but if you go back, some of these, there's like 14 pages, I think, like in fantasy or something, that they're not getting any love, like that they could use some time on the front page too.
Which, I mean, I'm hoping none of us exactly know how they're picking the featured list, but I'm hoping that they're going to continue kind of cycling through stories that they find that they feel are good quality that don't get as much visibility. But that is one good thing so far about the featured list is that not everything on there, like there are some stories that pop up on there that have hardly any thumbs up or reads. So at least they're not, it is a bit equalizing. We just aren't sure how they're picking them.
Yeah.
So,
but it wasn't like, I want to say when we first started, it wasn't like that. It was like the featured lists were like the top 25, 30 when we first started. And it was like, hey. Because I mean, you could still like see those, like, especially if you don't have a Faves or the Crown, you can't even find you in the leaderboard. You don't even know what rank you are. That's the only way I know what rank I am is if I go in, because I can't even search it by like my title. I have to manually go in through the leaderboard, because it's best because there's so many books that sort it by your genre or your category. And be like, hello, there I am. So, but I try not to play, like I said, I don't try to play the leaderboard thing because that thing just bounces around way too much.
It does. I pop on and off of it, like, because I've been consistently in like the 200s on the Fave, so I'm like popping on and like sometimes I have a crown and sometimes I don't, like popping on and off the list. So yeah, but it's one of the only metrics you have of like whether you're climbing up. So.
And I never know, and they don't tell you. So just in case you're wondering if you fave us, we don't know. Okay, like
we don't know how many faves we have. There's no way to see.
And so I just go on and I'm like, oh, I'm 70 something today, and I'm like, oh, I'm at 50 something. I guess something happened. Like I don't know until and like I said, I try not to check it, so I don't even know ever. But
yeah, the faves reset every week, so then it's like.
Yes, so you have to do the Faves every Sunday. I think it gets reset, which is one of the reasons why I think if I restarted again, like did another Vella, I would change my release date, like when I did my episodes. And then also I think the first time, if you're like brand new to Vella, this is your first rodeo, every month all the Faves get cleared out, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like especially the first month that happened was at August or maybe it was July. Well, no, September, because everybody was like, "Where'd all my Faves go?"
They're
yeah,
like, what happened?
It was like white and
yeah. Now at the start of every month, it actually has a little thing that pops up that says, "Check back in a couple days for like this month's new Fave list or whatever," because they do. They just like wipe it and
I think they keep the old Fave list too. So if you made it onto the top two, I think it's the 250, you can go back and actually look and see what your spot was. So I don't know if any reader actually does that. Like they're like, you know what, I really want to see what happened last month. But
it's probably more for authors to like go back and
like, I can't imagine being like, because I'm already like imagining, because readers are just, they want to go, they want to look, and they don't have time to sit there and like linger with stuff. You know, it's like Vella is that whole fast-paced type of idea that when they want to go, they want to find a story. They're going to glance at the homepage and be like, okay, it's the same stuff. You know, is there anything new? Is there anything worth me stopping my time? But that's really not on us. That at that point is like Amazon making it exciting to keep the reader on the website. Sorry, that's my IT kicking in.
But no, it's true. And Amazon is historically very good at that. So I feel like Vella is new and they're still kind of tweaking it. But I feel like that's bound to improve. The reader experience is bound to improve because that's kind of customer experience is sort of Amazon's thing. Like they're a master at that. So it's bound to improve.
They're doing a really good job listening to author feedback as well. So like whenever we're like, hey, you know, this would be better, or that, it takes a little bit, but they still like, that's how the new story bar got added. And I'm hoping that they'll do the completed, like something to put on a story to say if it's completed, because I know a lot of people have had to put it in their title.
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as like having something, you have a crown on one side, you have something else on the other side that says like, or like a circle around your, picture.
Yeah. Or even as simple as like a filter option for searching. where you can search for just completed stories or something. Like,
Yeah.
would be helpful for people, because there are some readers who don't want to start reading until it's complete.
Yeah. I think that's one of those things also that is going to be hard for Bella, because I know a lot of people are like, I'm typically a binge reader where I'm like, if I want to do a story and I know if there's like 3 books in the series, I want them all at the same time. I just want to because I don't want to forget. I want the story to just keep going the entire time.
Yeah.
Because life gets crazy. But Bella has really changed that for me, where I'm able to, it's more like, because I am busy, sneaking in the episodes like when I can. Like I've been doing that hashtag, that where do you Bella? And so just showing like all the random places that I've been reading, like my kid's basketball game. When I think I got a pedicure like the other day, and I was like, yep. And so all the places you can sneak it in.
Yeah, and I think there's probably 2 different types of readers. So like there are the readers who would want to wait till it's completed, and then there are the readers who would not want a completed story because they want ongoing, like they want to be a part of that, it's happening in the moment kind of feel. So I think there's probably going to be both types of readers on Bella.
Yeah.
Serial readers who are wanting that serial experience where they can vote and they can like interact with the author, they might want to search for stories that aren't completed yet. So probably going to get both. But
I feel like the binge stories do better though on Bella, because like us, when we started with 5 episodes at launch, they read 5 and they're like, okay, I want to keep reading. What else is there out there? And then they move on to a different story.
Another story, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but then they kind of forget that, and now they do have the follow option where you're following, and you're supposed to get notifications from Amazon that says, "Hey, your new story." But I don't know if that works for people on Android, because
it doesn't. So from what I've seen, if you are using the actual Kindle app on an Apple device, you will get a notification. But if you're using the web browser, which is what you have to use for anything other than Apple, you don't get a notification. Now you can manually go and see the stories you follow and like check them, but you're not going to get a notification when they post. Hopefully they'll change that. Like even an email notification would be nice.
Because they have a section at the top that's like your stories that you're following, like this is your follow section, and then at the bottom they have one that's like you were just reading these, but you may or may not be following them. I would think that even having like a section that is like, hey, this is the stories that you're following and they have new episodes, like that would be a nice section as well.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of authors ask for like a recently updated bar. So instead of just new stories, like stories that have recently updated in general. But I think also what you're saying, to have one specifically for like out of the stories you follow, here are ones that have new episodes, like that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think the recently updated episodes that'd be a lot, because some people are like updating 3 times a week. So does that mean that person shows up 3 times over somebody that maybe only does once? I do every other week, so I would barely ever be on there. So I would imagine it as like the leaderboard being flushed a lot, like it's moving quickly, unless Amazon is doing that knit where they're picking. I would think I would want the people that are following me to know more than
I think the one advantage to the recently updated bar that I can see is for the readers who are looking for that story. Like if you're the type of reader who's wanting a story that's updating frequently, you can easily find the ones there. Like these are the stories that have like they're updating 2 or 3 times a week because they're constantly staying in the bar. But yeah, it would push out everybody else, right? And then it becomes the game of like who can update the most, because you're going to stay there in the bar, right?
Yeah, so then I wonder like if it's going to be like more smaller episodes, more compact, frequently being released. It would change your whole writing style. Like I feel like that's the thing, we're always trying to figure out like the rules of the game so we can do better. The same thing, like trying to figure out what's the order of the faves, because is it just the faves? Are you using other things to list it, or well, and we know now, because of the interview that they did with the project manager, we know now that the author bonuses
are based on a combination of how often you post.
Yeah, I didn't know
And
that.
yeah, that's really helpful to know.
Yeah.
So they're based on how often you post and the activity on your story. So the authors who are posting, but they did say that they recommend at least once a week. So I'm not sure that there's like a direct correlation. Like if you're posting 5 times a week, I don't think that necessarily means you get a bigger bonus. I think they're just looking at if you haven't posted in 2 months versus someone who's posting regularly.
Yeah, because I've seen people that are like, yeah, they were posting and then something like, life happens. And then it gets to be like a good chunk of time for their next update. And so, and you would think as an author, you would want to keep the momentum of your story going because the readers want to make sure that they're not going to get involved with your characters or, and then end up, being left hanging. That's like the worst feeling ever is knowing that like, because you're taking a chance by doing this Vella business of not knowing if the story is ever going to end and you don't want to get attached.
Yeah. And I think just because of the way that Vella is structured, if you are taking too long between updates, they will just move on. Like they'll get frustrated because they're left hanging or they'll just forget about it. And especially if they're not if they're not on an Apple device where they get a notification, there's a chance that they may not even remember to go back and check your story to see if you've updated. So I think staying top of mind, which is like, marketing concept, but staying top of mind, I think is important, which is why the regular posting schedule is so helpful. I do once a week. I would like to do more, but I just can't. Right now, it's not sustainable for me. I would like to do twice a week if I could, but it's not sustainable for me. So once a week is where I am right now.
Well, I'm even less than that. So with my every other week, but
until you hit 500 thumbs up, and then you're gonna be
and then I got it. But I feel like if I had to do it over again, like if I had to, obviously eventually I'll get to the end of this story and I'll have to start a new one. But I think I would almost want to have all my episodes written out so that I could do that. Once a week is actually pretty good. I know some people want more, but at the same time you can make it last longer because I know some people, when you finish a story, they are nervous that they're going to be forgotten because that's just like at that point nobody's reading your stuff. Oh, there's my dog, I'm sorry. You don't have anybody to keep coming back to read it to push you up on the list, so you kind of fall, and that's why you don't want to play the leaderboard game. You're going to fall up with the faves with that.
Well, and I think there's a strategy to that because like I know there are some people who dropped all their episodes at once. I'm writing a few ahead of what I'm posting. Like I've actually completed the book as of last week in terms of what I'm writing, but what I'm posting is like 10 episodes behind that. But if you can pace them out in what you're posting, you're kind of extending the relationship with the reader. They're more likely to remember you because now they've been reading your episodes weekly for like a couple months versus they binge read it all in one day and then there was nothing else and they just move on.
And also, I feel like it gives you that time, or not me, but the reader time to really like think about the episode as well. Like you add that space between episodes. It's kind of like a TV show, and you're thinking about it, and you have time to discuss it. Like if you're reading it with other people, or somebody, and you're like, the character said this, and it's really been like sitting like on my mind for a while. I wonder if that's really what they meant, or if they meant this, or you know what I mean? Like you start to pick apart the details, and you can kind of enjoy the story a little bit more, versus like just powering through and finishing it and then being like, well, that was fun, let's move on to the next.
I think that component is really what I'm excited about with Vella. Like I'm not there yet because I don't have the readership to like have a big thing, but that would be what I'm excited about, is for it to be like the following of a TV show where they're excited, they're talking to each other between episodes, like, what do you think is going to happen next time? That's the potential that Vella has, but the readership right now is still, for me at least, is still so small that really it's only my alpha group that's like having that discussion, which I'm still loving because they are having that discussion. But I would love to have the size of readership where I, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, they could be actually dialoguing about the story between episodes. That would be like my goal for Vella as an author, is to get to that place. But
I wish they had that, like, as well as like an author profile, like where you could like list all your, I mean, I only have one book, but I know there's lots that have more than one, but like where they could go and they would look at the author name, look at your book, and then be able to go and be like, have like a discussion about that book. I feel like it wouldn't be too far off, especially since they already have like forums and stuff. Through Amazon.
I'll get towards some of those features. In the meantime, like, we're having to just direct readers to our social media, which is okay if we can grow that and make it work.
Just another step for them to not want to take, because they're, you know what I mean? Like, it's there. I feel like there's a lot of like, when, like, because if you're used to reading a book and you're like, it's just as simple as turning the next page and keep going, and then here it's like, okay, so you've now finished this episode. Do you want to like it? Do you want to go to the next episode? Do you want to unlock this episode? Do you want, you know, there's a lot of like questions that they tend to ask that it's like, if they're not, once you get used to it, you're like, oh, you know, you're fine. But at the beginning, you're like, wait, what's going on? What's happening? You know?
Yeah. So you've been doing Vella now since it launched, right? For several months. So what would your advice be for authors who are just coming into Vella and just making decisions, setting up their story? Or like, what would you, if you could go back and tell yourself when you were first coming into Vella, what advice would you give for a new Vella?
This is a good question. I would say when you release your episodes are important. Right now, like I said, I'm doing mine every other week. I would do at least weekly. I would make sure that I had at least 10 episodes to drop at a time, because you want to have more of the story to kind of hook them in. You want to make sure the first 3 episodes aren't like full of backstory. I've read a couple that it kind of can slow down the pace, and you want to make it exciting for them, that they want to keep reading, and it's not just being like a bunch of information. And then what other good stuff? I'm sure you have options too. Maybe editor. How we say that?
Get an editor. Yes.
Get an editor to look at your stuff, or somebody else's eyes. Preferably somebody that is not your family, that loves you to pieces, because they tend to read stuff with rose-colored glasses. Sorry, Mom. I think what I said before about focusing on the first 3 episodes, episode 4, like having a good turnover, like those, I mean, I want to say, I think I put it in a post. I was like, you want to edit those first 3 episodes until you pretty much want to cry. Like someone's like, actually, one more thing about episode 1, and you might like start to tear up a little bit. That's about how much you want to really make sure that you're fixing those episodes. You're gonna have a lot of people tell you like to change something over and over again. And I think as authors, we tend to be like, like, you don't, that's my baby. Why would you even suggest that? And I think it's something that you have to learn to be kind of thankful that someone is looking at your stuff and willing to give you that feedback. They took the time to read it and give you that feedback, and to kind of look at it with new eyes, because that's the whole point. We have a story living in our head, and you know, they don't. So they're able to be like, I don't understand why she's doing this, or he's doing this, or what does that mean? Or I don't know. It was something, I forgot what it was, if it was cooking that I read, and I was like, I don't know what that means, you know? And so just making sure that you're not confusing the reader, and you're still, you know, because a confused reader will not stick around. I had my first feedback where it was like somebody didn't like my stuff, and I was like, okay, it's all right. It's okay. We're okay. Everything's okay here. Just because, maybe they're just not your target audience,
Yeah.
maybe, it's not just because that person didn't like your stuff, doesn't mean somebody else won't come along and just love it to pieces. And so it's hard as a new person to not like focus on the one bad,
Yeah.
author notes. I've read some that are like really long, and then I've read ones that are like, thanks. I guess trying to find like I personally am not as big of a fan as, this is just me, it's personal, the begging for likes. I know that's what we're supposed to do, but I do it too on some of them, and I'm like, oh, please like, please subscribe, please follow, please fave. But at the same time, they don't know about it, so you kind of got to put it in. They, or even knowing that you're supposed to like each episode. Sometimes they come in and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna like this book. This is good. I'm like, actually, it's every episode. You can keep liking it, like it as much as you want. There's never too many likes, folks.
And if you're a new author for Vella watching this, like, I guess my encouragement would be not to give up too soon, because like Vella is still very new, and I've even within like the first month, I saw authors jumping ship. Like, we're frustrated, it's not work, and it's too soon. Like, it's so new. So I'm hoping that for those of us who got in it early and are like staying in it, we're gonna end up benefiting from that.
I agree with that sentiment so much. Yeah. To not give up. There's many times, especially this is my first book, being like, what am I doing? I'm competing with some like real A-list authors here that are pushing. Oh my goodness,
yeah, there are some that have like 11,000 thumbs up by now, or something. Like, it's crazy.
Don't like to focus on me, just write my story. But don't let the comparison like drag you down. Just hit publish. I know it sounds crazy, and you'll be surprised, because I want to say like two authors I've convinced to join Vella, and they were regular, book writers, and they were like, this is the best thing you've ever done for me. They've made more off of their 1 month on Vella, because with the bonuses, even if you're not like a top 5, you're still making a good chunk of change. That is, like, I originally thought, when I looked at like the royalties, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be making like a quarter, like for however many episodes, you're not going to be making much. But I never factored in this bonus business that,
the bonuses have been more generous than I expected. Yeah.
That's what keeps you around, and you're like, yeah, I need more episodes. I need another story. I need, what I mean? That it keeps you in the game, and the Vella game. And I just don't want them to give up too quickly, just because I'm like, my first month like on Vella, I will share, because it was pretty pitiful. I had 22 reads, which is, not the best. But I had like 5 or 6 episodes up. So I think I made, I guess I'm allowed to share, I made like $15 for that month. That's still for like 22 reads. To me, I was like, what? I thought I was going to be making like $1. So, yeah. And sometimes that's what it's like when someone, you have a book listed on the Kindle publishing or whatever. It's like you got 1 reader or something, and that's like 99 cents or something. So I technically, like, I sold with a 99-cent book like 15 books.
Yeah. Which, and I'm guessing, I don't know your exact numbers, we haven't talked about it, but I'm guessing that your bonus has increased quite a bit from the $15 that you started with. So
yeah, so it definitely, I made it into like the hundreds in August, and I was like, what just happened? Because, I think I had like 56 reads in August, when I was like, hey, as long as I'm doubling, like I'm improving, then I'm not going to be upset. Like, I'm not expecting to be, the top 20, top 30, like where they're making like tons of reads a day. That's another thing. Set a realistic goal for yourself. especially as like a new author. Don't be expecting you're going to come out the gate with a bunch
Yeah.
of reads. It might just be your mom, you know.
Well, and that's actually something I was just thinking, is that I love that you and I are talking, because neither of us is a huge big name author with like 11,000 thumbs up or anything.
Yes.
And you didn't come with a pre-existing readership. So like, this is achievable, right? Like it's not unrealistic to be able to actually make money with Kindle Vella. Like, it's achievable.
Yeah.
And we're still very early in it, so it's hopefully going to just grow.
Yeah, and I feel like every month you're only going to just get a little better. Your name's going to get out there more. It is the thing everybody says. It's that slow roll. You got to play the long game for this. It's not, you're not going to walk in the door and get 1,000 reads.
But I think realistic expectations is really important, because I know I've been transparent on my YouTube channel with how much my bonuses have been. And like, it's not a lot, but it's more than I expected. I think like my first month was like 30 something. And then the next month it tripled and it was 120. And I was like, what the, right? So,
yes.
And I made a video about that, because I was like, I was not expecting, right? And I did have some people saying to me, but still, like, all this work and you made $120, like, but I think that comes down to realistic expectations. Like, I feel like, and you and I kind of chatted about this before we started recording the video.
Yeah.
But I feel like there are some people who expect to be able, like it's going to be a get rich quick sort of like overnight, just a flood of people reading your story, and because you put all this work and effort into it, and it's a creative endeavor, and it's like you want that return on it, but that's not the reality. Is that authorship is a slow build. Yes. There are authors who make it big very quickly, but that's rare. Actually, it's not the regular method of building an author career. Yeah.
Everybody has a different like writing journey, and you can't expect to be the same as somebody else. And sometimes it's not even just like, is that person a better writer than me or whatever. Sometimes it's just luck. Maybe they just got featured, and now being on the page, their story has blown up. It's really hard to you shouldn't play the comparison game, and you should really just be focusing on, I guess, the why of why you're writing. I mean, sometimes we need that, because Vella can be about like the crowns, it can be about the likes, and it can be being number one. But really, the best thing about writing is having just somebody read your story. So
yeah,
keep it focused.
Okay, so Callie's going to take a minute to just read an excerpt of her story. And then if you're interested in reading the rest of it, you can find it on Kindle Vella, and I'll drop all the links below. So here is the beginning of A Forest of Stolen Memories.
Okay. This is episode 1, Forgotten. And they all lived happily ever after. Wait, no, they didn't. Words stuck to the tip of my tongue and then disappeared as if they never existed in the first place. Every thought, every memory disintegrated from my brain, leaving nothing but the searing plain in their absence. My eyes flew wide as the pain spread like fire in my head. My eyes watered and I reached for my scalp, but my hands were stuck, gripped in another's as they held my fingertips. Where am I? What am I doing here? A masculine face came into focus. A foot taller than me, he hunched down, his silver eyes clouded with concern. His grip on my hands remained, even as I gave a few tugs for him to release me. He was speaking, but the pain in my head was bright, all-consuming of my senses. Until it wasn't. As quickly as it started, it stopped. I blinked, my eyes fixed on my white-gloved hands. Diamonds sparkled from my elbows to my fingertips, tiny but numerous. They were shimmered with each ragged breath I took. Dazed, I stared at them, confused why I couldn't remember a single detail about my gloves or about myself. Who am I? Even the most basic question I couldn't answer. Something was terribly wrong. Rose, darling, the man whispered, his words warm like honey, coaxing my eyes to his. So familiar, those silver lined with impossibly long, sandy brown lashes. They matched his styled hair, which curled around his golden crown, not a strand out of place. My eyes stayed on his crown, solid gold with a massive oval ruby in the center. A prince or king? He seemed too young to be a king. As if he could read my thoughts, he smiled with teeth so white and straight that I felt like I might be in a dream until his cream-covered glove squeezed mine and snapped me back to reality. I shook my head, trying to understand, but my mind felt sluggish. Too many sensations were happening at once, my mind overwhelmed by the onslaught of details around me. I willed my brain to wake up, my spine tingling in alarm. Who are you? And who is Rose? I licked my dry lips and asked, who? His right eyebrow twitched, perfectly sculpted eyebrow that matched the other to the point of distraction. In fact, all of him was symmetrically perfect. His arrogant nose, not too big and not too small, centered on his chiseled tan face. A sensual mouth, turned down at the corners, frowned at me. His thumbs rubbed a soothing motion across my knuckles, still trapped in his tight grip. I tugged my hands again, this time so forcefully he swayed in my direction. Rosalind, he scolded, if this is one of your games, it is not funny. Rosalind? A name? My name? My lips formed the word, dragging out the syllables, but still not a flicker of recognition. My insides felt rattled. Like a thief in the night, someone had come and left complete chaos in its wake. His glossy black boot stepped towards me, brushing the white of my dress with it, the fabric rustling with the movement. Yards of white lace, patterned with roses over a satin gown, clung to the top half of my body and then fanned out around me. More diamonds winked up at me through the white lace. Even to me, it was too much. I twinkled like a star in the night sky. Distracted by my dress, I didn't notice that he slid closer, so close that his warm breath caressed my cheeks and I inhaled his lemon scent. Fear rooted me in place, the feeling of confinement strangely paralyzing. His silver eyes trailed over my features with a heated possession, stopping to linger at my lips. Releasing one of my hands, he reached his gloved fingers towards my face. On instinct, I slapped it away, a loud pop that echoed in the silence. This man assumed too much, touching me as if he knew me. Did he think he could just kiss me because he wished it? Not if I had anything to say about it. The bubble of fog popped in my mind, and self-preservation set me into motion. The true lead began to fight. I pulled frantically at my hand, still locked in his grip, and twisted and moving backward and not moving anywhere at all. Strong fingers held my waist, pulling me closer instead. Don't touch me, I hissed. Let go. Is this about yesterday? I thought we settled it. You made me a promise and I expect you to keep it. No more talk of doubts. His eyes narrowed and his fingers became painful. You're hurting me. Then stop being difficult. So that is my excerpt from A Forest of Stolen Memories, episode 1, Forgotten.
Nice. So if you want to continue reading, you can find it on Kindle Vella. I'm going to drop all the links down below. Her name on Kindle Vella is Callie Thomas, and A Forest of Stolen Memories is the book title again. And as you can see, you're thrown right in there with Rose, trying to figure out what's going on. So if you'd like to continue and find out what's happening, you can read more in her story there. And the first 3 episodes are free for all Kindle Vella stories. And if you're a new reader to Kindle Vella, you will also get 200 free tokens. So you'll be able to get through even more episodes in her story if you'd like to continue reading. So thank you for joining me to talk about your story today. So for everyone, this is Callie Thomas, and her story, A Forest of Stolen Memories, is on Kindle Vella. All the links will be down in my description below. And you can also find it under the fairy tale tag. And what other tag is it in?
It's under fantasy, romance, young adult, magic, just kisses, and sweet romance. Just kisses.
Yes. And if you're looking for sweet romance that is, clean romance, the Just Kisses tag is a great one to check because that is what it's for on Kindle Vella. So be sure to check out her story. I'm going to put all of her social media links as well below. So if you want to follow her Instagram or her Facebook, she's most active on Instagram. And she does, she's doing incentives, as we mentioned earlier, where if she reaches she has one right now for reaching 500 thumbs up that she's now going to start weekly episodes, but she'll probably be doing future incentives as well. If you want to get on and voting for those, you can follow her on Instagram and interact with her about her story there. So thank you for watching. And, it was great having you. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe so you can see more. I'm going to be doing future interviews with fellow authors and trying to get more information out there about this platform and the stories that are on there and the experiences that we're having there as authors. So be sure to check that out. And did you have any last minute things you want to say or anything?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me and letting me talk aimlessly for a while. And thank you for listening, and for all the readers for their support and the likes and the comments and the interaction. It just makes my day every time I see someone commenting about my story. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm hoping that we drove home the point that one way to be successful in Vella is to study stories that are working. So hopefully they'll all go read your story and try to figure out what you're doing correctly. Yeah.
Hint. Go read our stuff.